Hey guys, we're at Fort Morgan, Alabama today. It's in Mobile Point in, Mobile, Alabama. Yeah, I know, that's not Mississippi, so how is that a Mississippi story? Well, Fort Morgan was such an integral part to our nation's defenses, and so many Mississippians served our country there that, well, since I was in the neighborhood, I decided to include it in our story. Come along with us. Let's go explore. And by the way, if you like this content, give us a little boot, like, and subscribe. Thank you. Colonel John Bowyer arrived in Mobile Point in June of 1813 to supervise the construction of the fort named after him. The fort defended against two British invasions. This is HMS Hermes. It sank as it attacked Fort Bowyer in September of 1815. As you leave the Fort Bowyer site, you pass the sign that denotes Lafayette's departure on his tour to New Orleans. This is as far out on the point as I'm going to go, and I think it's a beautiful scene of Mobile Bay. This is the general area where the Hermes sunk. We're walking back toward Fort Morgan, and we see that the first Alabama soldier to die in the Civil War was a chaplain, and he drowned. He was a Presbyterian minister, but he also founded Sigma Alpha Epsilon at the University of Alabama in 1856. We'll walk back to the museum and see what we can see. I'm first struck by these beautiful Fresnel lens. They were used in the lighthouse on Mobile Point. Notice the concentric circles. That's physics. It took around 30 million bricks to build Fort Morgan. Notice the cat print and the animal bone in these two bricks. Enslaved people from the region were contracted out by their owners to make the brick and the mortar as well. This is a beautiful example of an 1840s era Mississippi rifle. This is, of course, a muzzle-loading percussion rifle probably used during the Civil War. Here are some really cool artifacts from the USS Philippi, and I think a really cool model of the USS Tecumseh. This is the portable writing desk of the commanding officer of the United States Colored Troops that served here at Fort Morgan. Here we have some great examples of ordnance used in and around Fort Morgan. If you look, you can tell that they used fused detonators so that they could time real closely when the shells exploded. And right below, they have a great cutout of a Civil War era exploding projectile. I wonder what was used for the torpedo that sank the USS Tecumseh. Colonel Stewart was placed in command of Fort Morgan, and in 1863, while supervising the firing of the fort's cannons, one of the 32-pound cannons exploded. It's real neat. You can see his personal effects in the display case here, and a big chunk of cannon about the size of the one that hit him. Here are some letters he wrote his wife not long before the exploding cannon decapitated him. That's enough of the museum for now. Let's talk about the fort's history a little bit while we move through the tunnel on toward Fort Morgan. Construction of Fort Morgan itself began in 1819, and due to the isolation of the fort, it took 15 years to complete. Now, this labor was provided by enslaved people whose owners had contracted with the government for their labor. At the height of construction, over 200 enslaved persons labored either here on Mobile Point or somewhere in the brickyards along Mobile Bay. In 1833, the project was officially declared complete. The fort was named for Revolutionary War hero Daniel Morgan. I just wonder what stories the floor of this old fort could tell. The total cost for the construction of the fort was a little over $1 million. The white stuff you see on all the brick is calcium lime used in the brick mortar during construction. The lime and seashell were excavated on Dolphin Island. Now we're looking inside the soldiers' quarters, and you can see how nice they had it back in the day. Around 1898, Battery de Portel was constructed. It mounted two 12-inch breech-loading rifles known as disappearing guns. The gun used 268 pounds of explosives to fire a shell, a 1,046-pound shell, up to 8.5 miles. As we stand on top of the battery, let's look around the citadel and see how the modern, or the World War I part of the fort blended with the early 1800s and Civil War part of the fort. During his first real assignment with the United States Army, Mississippian Brigadier General Earl Van Dorn split his time between Fort Morgan and the arsenal at Mount Vernon, Alabama. Many Mississippians have stories to tell that include Fort Morgan, but I think we'll continue on with a little Civil War story. On January 4th, 1861, the Alabama Militia sieged Fort Morgan from the United States government. The fort remained in Southern hands until August of 1864. This is where you would come if you needed to see the ordnance sergeant. He would be the guy to give you what you needed, well, to shoot at your enemies. While the fort remained in Southern hands, it provided a safe haven to blockade runners who, of course, provided much-needed supplies for the Confederate government. On August 5th, 1864, Admiral David Farragut's 18-ship fleet passed the fort into Mobile Bay. The Federals attacked a Confederate fleet commanded by Confederate Admiral Franklin Buchanan. In the ensuing battle, the fort fired some 500 rounds, badly damaging some of the Union ships, but failing to sink any of them. The Tecumseh struck a mine, and during the Civil War, mines were called torpedoes. The Tecumseh lost most of her crew. This destruction and chaos and death so infuriated the admiral that it helped him to push through and get into the bay, and thus we get the declaration, "Damn the torpedoes." We hope you've enjoyed your visit to Fort Morgan today, and hope you've had an opportunity to see, learn, and explore. And we'd like to remind you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.